Welcome back to First Alert Weather Extra. I'm Chief Meteorologist Wes Wyatt. In today's Moment of Science, we bring you some very cool footage out of Clinton, Alabama. Check this out. This is a large dust devil that was sent in yesterday on the First Alert Weather app from Lance Brown in Clinton. This was at Peach Park, right across from Peach Park. It was spotted in that area. This large dust devil, and it's actually a vortice that can form without a parent thunderstorm. You know, kind of like a tornado. Actually, we have mesocyclones and rotating updrafts and storms that cause tornadoes. In these cases, when we see a dust devil, it follows what's called the Ekman spiral principle. And what happens, you have the surface that warms up, the air starts to rise, and it starts to rotate, and it's kind of like the figure skater. When the figure skater pulls arms in and spins faster, that centrifugal force principle, that's what drives these things. So as the air rises and they spin faster and faster, you'll often at times see dust devils picking up leaves, and often just develop out of nowhere on a sunny day, but they can certainly happen. And that was a fairly large dust devil, Lauren, for around here. One of the more impressive videos I've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, Wes, it's not every day we get video that cool on the First Alert weather app. So remember, if you ever see any weather oddities, hey, even if you have a picture of just the sky looking boring, you can send that in on the First Alert weather app too. Well, not so boring out on the West Coast. Over that way, they're about to experience something a little different than what we're used to around these parts. The Pacific Northwest is preparing for a powerful atmospheric river. Heavy rain and landslides are in the forecast for much of the West Coast, so flood watches have been issued. Hey, this could come as a relief, though, since California and Oregon have both been experiencing extreme droughts and wildfires. So that leads us to today's weather word as we kick off the weekend for you. I'm going to switch it up right behind me here, atmospheric river. So you may be thinking, okay, we got rivers down here on the surface of the earth. What's going on up in the atmosphere? Well, it's actually a band of moisture that travels through the upper atmosphere, and it's relatively long and narrow. And what it does is transports moisture from the tropics to places like the west coast of the U.S. and that's where it's really popular. And that what we see with the atmospheric river is that generally as you go forward with time, you're bringing in a lot of moisture from the tropics, and that is transported towards areas like the west coast. And what happens is if you do have a situation where there's a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, that can come down to the surface as rain, and if the temperatures are cold enough, that can actually come down to the surface as snow. Of course, we don't know much about that here, but we do know the west coast can be relatively dry. So when you get these atmospheric rivers to set up, it does help to bring moisture to spots that typically it would be harder to see because these areas are going to be more dry and parched. So generally, as we look ahead with their forecast, they could be seeing more rain. But why are flood watches being issued? Well, you could get a lot of heavy rain in a short amount of time, and with that, out west, you can get landslides. So they're going to be having to watch for landslides and mudslides. So though atmospheric rivers can be beneficial and help to transport deep tropical moisture to drier parts of the country, there can also be a negative side to that. So it's not like a river's just flailing around up in the atmosphere. This is actually just moisture transport from somewhere, let's say like Hawaii, the tropics in the Pacific, to somewhere along the west coast of the U.S. So a pretty cool concept, and now you know you have a dinner conversation, you can bring up the atmospheric river. Well, when we return, after a flock of tropical birds were spotted up north, we explain behind the science of why they traveled so far from home. But first, let's take a look at today's Weather Almanac.
Welcome back to First Alert Weather Extra. I'm Chief Meteorologist Wes Wyatt. As we prepare to close out the month of September, meteorologist Matt Daniel and Mickey Ferguson join us now to give us a weather recap.
I don't know about you, Mickey, but I could use a little bit of rain in the yard. It's a little crunchy.
Things are getting a little dry, a little parched.
Get some water.
Okay.
Let's talk about how much rain we normally see over each month. And as you can see behind us, September and October in blue. Those are the lowest amount of rainfalls totals that we normally see each year. So September, October are dry months.
We might could take this full screen so you can see this a little bit better. But yeah, some of the driest times of the year. So starting to get a little bit dry. But to tell you what, Birmingham and Anniston not doing so bad this month.
Yeah, we could still use some rain in Birmingham. We've only recorded half the amount and the month's almost over with. So we could use some rain in Birmingham. Tuscaloosa, though, it's been pretty dry. We've only recorded
really
half of an inch.
Anniston's almost on par for what we typically see this time of the year. So yeah, let's check it out. In West Alabama, you just mentioned, could use a little bit more. They're under a little bit of a drought going on.
We are, and you can see with the country, we're seeing really nasty drought conditions across eastern Texas, going to Louisiana. It's even spreading into southern portions of Mississippi. And as we zoom on in, you can see that drought is in the exceptional range, which is towards the very top tier of drought. So that's pretty significant from Austin, even as you go towards the New Orleans area. But as you were saying, Mickey, we're seeing some dry conditions here.
Yeah, Abby's showing up in West Alabama. Abby, normal. You can see abnormal drought there to West Alabama. So we could use a little bit more in several of our areas. Now, how do we track all this on our First Alert Weather app?
Yeah, we've got some chances for some rain this week, so hopefully you can get a little bit. But did you know that you can track the radar through the First Alert Weather app and also look at a future radar? So just make sure you open up the app, and on the very bottom right-hand side of the radar, when you click on it, it'll say past. That's showing the current radar. But if it's in the future mode and you slide the scroller through, it will take you into the future, showing you where that rain could form. So sometimes people have looked at the radar and saw future and realized it really wasn't the actual radar or what was happening at the moment. So just make sure you check that out. It's a great feature, not only to look at the current radar, but just get an idea of maybe some of that rain could make it into your area.
Look into the future and impress your friends and family.
All right, we'll have an update on that drought monitor and more. I think we'll get another update on that coming up on Thursday.
I'm giddy.
Hopefully you'll get some rain.
All right, we've had a little bit of wet weather showing up out there. I want to update you on what's happening in the tropics. We now have Tropical Storm Philippe that's out over the central Atlantic, and it's going to be interesting to see how this one evolves past the weekend. Still some uncertainty there. You can see by Saturday, this system expected, though, to still be a tropical storm. We're not expecting this to deepen into a Cat 5 hurricane at this point, but it is one that we're going to monitor closely. And looks as though if you have golf plans for this weekend heading down to the coast, we're not seeing any threats there, at least for this weekend. There is another system. There's a low chance, 0%. You can see the Hurricane Center they were watching. There was a upper disturbance that was out over the Gulf of Mexico, and then way out in the Atlantic, there's a chance that we could see a new system. You can tell it's getting its act together, becoming more defined. So we may be up to Rena, the next name on the list. But again, that's out over the eastern Atlantic. We're in an El Nino cycle right now that looks to continue for the next several months, and what that does often with all the wind shear you end up having in those sort of situations, that has to do with the warmer waters over the equatorial Pacific. It can have an impact on what happens in the tropics, and I think that's one factor that's helped us out so far this hurricane season. Now the rainfall still kind of hit or miss, but as we talked about last week, this is our next best hope for any wet weather, these scattered showers and thunderstorms that are going to be in our forecast. And you can see as we go through this evening, well, in the short term, most of the wet weather's back to the southwest. A first alert to Demopolis. Got some rain moving in. If we could just send some of that a little bit further to the east there, we could certainly use it in East Alabama. But here on Weather Extra, the next big thing that we're going to be watching here is still kind of an unsettled setup over the next couple days. The flow patterns kind of favoring a stalled boundary over the region, and that's what's going to keep even a few scattered showers going through tonight. Now, as far as any severe weather, that threat is going to stay back off to the west of us. It looks like in the short short term, although we did have a storm today that popped up over Tuscaloosa, and I still think we could see an isolated storm next day or two. Nothing widespread. Again, that's the thing here. The rain's going to be very hit or miss, but out the door tomorrow morning, you can see even the models indicate there might be one lone shower. And one thing we need to watch out for tomorrow morning when you hit the road could be some dense fog across parts of West Alabama, and especially for areas back to the southwest. And then tomorrow, scattered showers and storms possible. Greatest chance after about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Watch out, especially for areas to the west. That seems to be the more favorable zone where we have the greater supply of moisture. Back to the west, you can see 6 o'clock, even the chance. Maybe Anniston, you see that? Could see an isolated shower or two. But the rain chances, at least we have some hope for a little bit of wet weather, but the chances are still very scattered. Next couple of days, we get into the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Look at that. As we were talking off the top of the show, we're still hanging on to the summer heat, upper 80s. For Saturday and Sunday, we actually reached a high temperature today in Tuscaloosa, 91 degrees out there. So, yeah, the heat, it's still hanging on. And meteorologist Lauren Linehan checking out the data beyond the 7-day forecast. So, Lauren, are we starting to see some fall temperatures out there?
No, we are not. Wes, thanks for asking. That is a great lead-in.
I tried.
I know, you tried, but I got to tell you, we got nothing. So look at this 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. It's not just us here in Alabama. Granted, a lot of folks are going to be upset about this. You can see a good 2/3 of the country 6 to 10 days from now will be seen above average temperatures. The one exception out west. And hey, that could have something to do with that atmospheric river that's going to be funneling a lot of moisture across the west coast. Cloudier, and so that could lead to lower temperatures with that wet weather. But for us, not so much. Looking at above average heat. Now, what does above average heat mean for us? Well, we're supposed to be in the mid 80s this time of the year as we're rounding out September and heading into October. So I'm not looking at extreme heat like our friends down in Brazil have been experiencing with that strange heat wave going from winter into spring. But for us here in central Alabama, we could possibly be seeing upper 80s, low 90s going into next week, and that could possibly also put us into the 80s the week beyond that. So this is looking from October 1st to the 10th, and this is showing going into next week still some milder mornings with temperatures in the 60s. Maybe, just maybe, once we get into the following weekend, the second weekend of October, there could be a little bit of hope in the forecast. So we'll see what we can do. But in the meantime, we've been talking about the heat here in central Alabama, but I want you to check this out. A community got a special treat after flamingos flocked to an unusual spot. Sean Gallagher explains the science behind why these feathered Floridians traveled so far from home.
This is the type of scene you'd expect in South Beach in Miami, not South Beach in Port Washington. And word spread fast.
Facebook.
Yeah, that's always something.
I heard it this afternoon, and I'm like, yeah. And then I heard them, like, oh, it's a zoo down there.
They're one of my favorite birds.
We just came. We had no idea there was going to be this many people.
And it was a must for those who were bonkers about birds. With their long lenses in tow, they snapped once-in-a-lifetime shots.
You get the butterflies. Even I was just saying people before, like you can see the people that just showed up, how jittery they are at first when they show up.
I've never seen one in my life, so I'm like, I gotta go get it. It's a lifer.
Experts say the fluorescent phenocopteriformes, that's a science word for all the birders out there, landed here after being diverted by Hurricane Idalia. A surprise to Dawn Ritter that she was ready for.
Shocking. It was just shocking. And of all places, like, I had tears in my eyes today. I really did, yeah.
Whatever the reason, Dawn and dozens of other folks flocked to Port Washington to catch these Floridian fledglings.
My favorite color is pink, and I like feathers and that kind of stuff, and they're just so majestic.
Even if it was just for a moment.
And I don't expect them to hang around very long.
I would be like, am I awake? What's going on here?
Yeah, for Wisconsin, that's a little unusual, but just goes to show the power of the tropics. When Idalia came, they went running. Can't blame them.
Yeah, wow, that is a very incredible story there. I know we see a lot of reports of gators around here and things like that, but hey, it's certainly still hot out there and more scattered showers and storms. We'll talk about it tonight first.
Yeah, that's right, but join us here on Weather Extra again tomorrow night at 6:30. Have a safe and happy Monday evening.